Rescue, revamp, create. The art of drum synthesis. The new course is available at Letsynthesize Academy.
Yo, Dan Larson here, welcome to the new Synthesize Sunday episode, and today, again for request, I'm showing you how to create Burr Oak style drum and bass using only vinyl like this. Grab this project from my Patreon below and click here for my academy if you want to learn more about music production, but right now let's jump into it. Okay, so here is this cool little beat once again. Here are the drums. The effects that are actually important to listen to them with the drums, because this is how they complement each other. These are the little fills that I made a video about and gave out on my Patreon. Click here if you want to check it. So there are 6 little fills in that package that you can do like a lot of things with, but the final part is actually more exciting. Because this little sound makes a huge role in the main bass. This is why I sustain it with a huge reverb. So here you can see that it's basically just a reverb, an OTT, a high pass filter and a saturator. And all together with this riser and this laugh walk with some resonance that comes from the delay. Makes the ending of the whole beat really exciting, at least to me. Okay, so let's go to the basses, because I bet those are the things that you guys are more interested about. So, as I said, we have this little sound. So this was the one that I added a huge reverb on it at the ending part. It's basically a pad sound. What I did with it is I just transposed it down by almost 2 octaves and added an OTT, a huge high pass filter, you know, to boost the interest of the sound, and a saturator. Without the saturator, it almost sounds like a noise, but with some resonance, actually huge resonance, we can give tonality to the sound that was previously almost like a noise, and also, you know, we can create really exciting sound if we after distort it and add several effects. But right now I think they sound fine, and with the starting Reese, these 2 guys give a really nice touch for the first hit of this beat. Without this pad, it was boring, but with that we added a nice little touch to it. Okay, so let's talk about the Reese. It plays on D sharp 1, you can go higher. It will sound great. I had to add an EQ, a saturator and a disperser. That is actually important, because without that, it doesn't have a nice character. So adding a disperser to this kind of bass sound, I've learned that it is really important, and as I hear Burr Oak uses that a lot too. Okay, so I started it with a simple saw and make it almost mono. So I didn't want to have the full stereo fill, because I wanted to have those little movements that the voices face cancel each other, and this is what creates a movement that is actually important. And I added a higher one. So it is 1.5 octaves higher with also the same voices. And this is what I really love to do. I just add the simple sine, and I like to find this cycle on the wavetable, or go with the vocoder and add even more higher overtones to it. That sounds really nice for a sub. And normally I just route it direct out, but this time I didn't do that, it sounds fine. Okay, so let's add the bandpass filter. When LE43 modulates the bandpass filter to add a cool movement to the sound. This is how your sound won't be static and boring. Okay, let's go to the FX, and an OTT comes handy. Then we need to distort it really heavily. And normally I put a distortion before the OTT, but this time it sounded a lot better than doing it before. Now the sound is cool, but there are too much on the mid and mid lows, so we definitely want to treat it with a notch. And this is why LE42 is here, to move the notch a lot slower than the bandpass filter moved or the other effects. And I added even more notches. And now we get that really nice and deep tone to it. And another touch to the deepness is a phaser. So right now we have a really aggressive, distorted and deep sound, almost like a growl. But it sounds just fine for the first hit of this little beat. And we have this LE4 that moves other stuff like oscillator 3 level, the compression mix, the high EQ gain, the filter 1 cutoff, just for, you know, a little different and more movement to it. And the oscillator levels. And I also have the compress sign that plays below the 0 octave. And the purpose of that is just to add a nice stereo width, some field to the basses. And let's go to the main bass, this stereo, this noisy clap, whatever. It's so heavy and aggressive in the face. Now this might sound like a regular compressed sine bass. And it almost is, but we definitely want, but we had to play a little with it to add the accent to it. Now without the disperser again, as you can hear, it sounds a little unstable, but the disperser adds the right stability to it. This is how I can express it. I really like the texture that the disperser adds to this bass. And obviously some EQing to clean up the sound. Okay, so I chose the sine module, whatever wavetable, that sounds like this. And I play with the wavetable position with LE41. So this is the movement that I wanted to have for the boom, 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 you know, that really pitch bendy or whatever sound to it. But I added the form scale warping mode because I wanted to have a little more higher overtones, and the FM from oscillator 2. That has really nice mid and higher overtones that we're going to filter, distort, that creates really nice mid and higher overtones that go into, you know, EQ, filter, then distort, so create really nice movement and aggression to it. But we need some noise too that we can compress together, that we can compress and distort together with the oscillators. First, let's route them. So oscillator 1, 2 and the noise with the notch filter. And the drive is really high, as you can see. And LE42 drags the cutoff of it. Also LE41 drags the level of the main oscillator. And in the effects we need more voices, so I didn't want to have voices or unison voices in the main oscillators because I wanted to have a more stable sound, not like a really moving like a Reese sound that, you know, phase cancel each other. I just wanted to have a stable sound, but a little more voices with the unison. This is why I filtered the lows too. Then the distortion comes. Now here comes the tricky part, the EQ, because I had to play with the low band, so killing the low frequencies and boosting it really heavily. When I boost it, I created that very nice distorted sine kind of sound, you know, that. But at the beginning of the modulation that LE42 creates here, as you can see, I wanted to have a little more higher sound, a little more tops to it. This is what creates the pulsing sound. And also LE42 adds the pitch movement, so if you go to the matrix, and here is the voice transpose and global voice transpose, creates the pitch movement. So LE42 serves two purposes. First, the pitch movement. Second, the EQ low band movement. Okay, then I added a phaser to make the sound deeper. So once again, LE41 moves the filter cutoff, oscillator 1 wavetable frames, the noise level, oscillator 1 level, and the reverb mix that is not activated, so I'm deleting that one. Okay, so then we need a really nice Flanger Reese bass that sounds like this. Okay, so the cool part here is that I use an arpeggiator to add the modulation, so it's sort of wom 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 sound, because without that it's just a sustained Reese. Let's see without that. But with the arpeggiator, so it has a really interesting movement to the sound. Without the extra effects after viral, it's so funny. So I had to add an OTT. Then roar that I just, can't get bored of it. It's so cool. Then 2 instances of flangers, and the reason why I put them in an audio track is by simply being able to control both of the driver knobs by simply just one knob. So I activate the flanger a little later here. Okay, then EQ. So as you can hear later with the flanger, I added a little more tops to it, because without that, I feel that it is not cutting through the mix enough. And then a huge amount of distortion with the saturator bass shaper that again. And that is what brings everything together. Okay, so let me deactivate the arpeggiator so it won't fool us when we go through the viral preset. Right, I kept the effects after viral so it will sound a little better. And probably you will hear what we are doing a lot better. So I started with a saw without any unison voices, and after that a really high pitched simple triangle wave. As you can see, the synth that it does the magic with some vocal that distorts the triangles a little. This is what I meant previously. This is the sub, so as you can see it goes directly out, and this is just a simple sine with a vocal, and you can see here these little bands that almost sounds like if we sine distorted it. So sine shaped it, and it sounds really good on basses, especially if you play it low. It can create awesome higher overtones that you really need to make the basses, especially the Reese's or your sub, really heavy. Then we need a noise. But as you can see, the noise goes direct to the effect, so I didn't want to filter it with a bandpass filter. So right now LE41 moves the filter, and also oscillator 2 that basically just creates the higher overtones at the beginning of the sound. So I would say this is how it expresses the clappy part, because this sounds almost like a clap at the beginning of the sound. Okay, so we need some voices. For the same reason that previously I didn't want to add unison voices, so I didn't want to have the phase cancelling movement, but again I wanted to add more voices to it. Then a phaser, and a mix of that again is moved by LE41. All these serve the same purpose, that adds the movement to it. And the distortion, we had to kill the lows a little bit, because if I don't do that it would just sound too heavily distorted. So this is not very pleasing, but with some EQing on the lows, the sound turns a lot better. Okay, and then an OTT. And the reverb to the end. So as you can see, LE41 just moved the phaser mix, oscillator 2 level, the really high, screechy, whatever. The filter 1 cutoff, the bandpass filter, and the reverb mix that we don't really need here. But the arpeggiator plays a really important role here. Okay, so let's get through the second Reese bass. Now as you can see, the vocal tone comes from EQing the mids really heavily. So I boosted the mids on this envelope. It's really cool, and this is all here, some EQing and the saturator to the end. But the first distortion is actually again really important, because that is what creates the main part of the distortion. Okay, so because this is a Reese bass, we want to start in with a saw, with 2 voices of unison, but in the advanced tab, pull back the stereo unison, so we bring out the movement, the phase cancelling movement. This is what we are looking for. Then we add the same part that I always love to do, a sine wave with the vocoder, and it goes directly to the effect, so we won't filter it. I'm filtering the saw. That when we distort together with the noise, it will sound great. Okay, so let's add noise. Right now we don't hear too much, but I'm filtering it a little, but we don't need oscillate. So I'm just using the sample. But in the effects, we are distorting it heavily. And I'm adding a flanger, and this is the main part of the movement. So as you can see, LE41 moves the flanger center. Then an OTT. That is what brings together everything. And a phaser to make the sound deeper. And the final equalizer to add more high speed, but also take care of the mid-high, so the sweepy frequency. Because if I don't do that, it's just not very pleasing, so I had to kill it a little. Okay, so I have a frog bass, so that's quite interesting, I would say. Wow! So without the EQ and the saturator, it's the same sound, but a lot duller. So I had to kill the mid-lows a little bit, at around 200k, and add a huge amount of saturation, almost 2 decibels. And some extra gains to the highs to make the sound bright. Okay, so I started with the sine formant 2 wavetable that sounds like this. As you can hear, some pitch movement are baked into the MIDI clip. This is why it sounds like Oooh, but I was like, let's play with this wavetable a little, so this is why I added the harm stretch. It sounds so stupid, so I'm filtering it with bandpass. With the distortion and compression, it will bring out some very cool stuff. But I wanted to add some FM too, so this is why oscillator 2 is here, so as you can see, it is FM modulated. So we're getting back the froggy part, so the growly, more bassy sound, not just a high screechy whatever. And then the sub, as I would call it the sub. Right now you don't really hear it, but everything will brought out when we go to the effects. But before we do that, let me show you that filter cutoff and the voice transpose. So basically the global pitch is modulated by envelope 1, and the only reason for that is just to add some click to the sound. That I bet you already hear. So let's go to the effects and add some huge distortion and a compression. And basically we are almost there, but let's some equalizer, to boost the interest of the sound. This is why I used LE41 mainly, to bring out those really exciting frequencies. Without the equalizer, you don't really hear the froggy bass. But it is there if we add a little more boost on the EQ. Okay, so then reverb. And basically we are done. So LE41 just moves the EQ gain, the flanger, that again is not activated, so we don't need that, and just the filter 1 cutoff, so this dude. And it's so exciting coming from that weird wavetable, adding some weird warping modes and the FM. It's just so cool. This is why I love Viral. The main strength of Viral is not really its sound quality, because as I experienced, it can't really sound that hard, but these exciting little warping modes added together, it just sounds so cool. Okay, and there is one final bass sound, the ending bass. And it's quite boring, but honestly the purpose of that is just to add the fundamentals for the vocals, so that you can hear in the FX hoop. So it is pure Viral. I started with the saw, but I filtered it a little with an FM. And the reason for the FM is to add the movement to the sound. And LE42 creates that movement. Let's add the sub. Again, direct out with the vocal. I just love this method. And the noise. And we want to filter only the main sound, so not the sub. This is why oscillator 1 is going directly here. And later in the effects, we are going to distort this one with the noise and add the sub on top of it. So Right now it sounds really clean. This is why we have the pure sub and this high pass filter thing with the noise. But later in the effects, we will have to add a little more voices to it and then distort it heavily with the linear floor that is really cool. Can bring out very exciting overtones. And LE41 drags the cutoff, so the filter, after the distortion, because I, just wanted to have a little duller sound that won't mess up with the vocals and the error effects. Phaser again to make it deeper. And the final low pass that basically just filters out the sound as we go to the end of this section. And the flanger to add even more voices to it. And OTT. Right, so this was all, but on the bass group I had to add a roar to make everything, bring together. And I pull back the drive head, so I didn't want to crunch everything, just add a little touch to it. This rack is only for the sidechain, so I applied it only on the low band and I made the crossover to 1K. And some final EQing and a limiter, and this is why I added on the bass group, and on the master I just added a saturator and a limiter. Right, I hope you learned a lot. Grab the project from my Patreon below. Also, you can drop your request there too, and click here from my academy if you want to learn a lot about music production. And see you guys next time. Peace.